Hi. Now, in this video, I started off the video showing the tools that I use to do a graphite drawing. And in that video, I had originally planned for that video to be a standalone video, and I refer to doing the actual drawing in another video. Well, I've decided against doing that. The video of the beginning of the drawing will be included in this video. So make sure you stay tuned after you look at the tools and those kinds of things that I'm going to be using. I will start the drawing. Hello, I'm back. Now what I want to do here, I want to draw a pencil portrait of this photograph. So what I'm going to do in this video is give you an idea how I get started and some of the tools I use. And in future videos I plan to show the process of actually drawing the portrait. In this video I'd like to just show you some tools that I'm going to be using. Now I'm going to be doing this using what's called the grid method, which is nothing more than a 1-inch grid over the top of the drawing. Let me show you how I do that. Now I've drawn a grid, 1-inch grid over on top of a sheet protector. And I take the photograph, put it inside the sheet protector, and I've got a grid, 1-inch squares, all over the original photo. Then, and I'm going to show you this in a second, I draw on the drawing paper the exact same 1-inch grid. Okay, so now, at this point, I've transferred the grid onto the drawing paper, and I purposely drew these lines on the drawing paper pretty light. And since this is a video about tools, I do consider this a tool. So in order to draw the grid, used a straight edge along the edge of my table, a triangle to draw the lines with, and of course a ruler to measure where I needed to draw the lines. Now the drawing paper I'm using is Strathmore Bristol, and it's Bristol Smooth Surface. Now next up are the drawing pencils I use, and pretty much on this side little lighter pencils, and on this side these are mostly darker pencils. Also have a couple of charcoal pencils. I need an eraser, a kneaded eraser, and the most important thing here, just move this over, are blending stubs, which are these. Very important to have a good assortment of blending stubs, and even use a couple of Q-tips for blending. So let's look at some of these tools. Here's a very important tool. This is a grayscale and value finder. And I will show you in a minute how that works, but here's a tool that will really come in handy. Next up, I use a protractor. And a protractor I use for a scale to measure inside one of those 1-inch squares to see where an area may start. I measure it on the photograph, then I measure it on the drawing paper. It gives me an idea of where to start a particular line, or very handy in lining up the eyes. Another important tool is this. This is a little eraser, and it's a Mono Zero they call it, and if I can show you, it has a very fine point for an eraser, and comes in extremely handy in a lot of areas, doing hair and whiskers and those kinds of things, and this drawing is going to have a lot of that. And this is just some extra erasers for the Mono Zero that I have. And this is a sanding board, and a lot of people might think you might use this for sharpening the edge of your pencil or something like that. And you can. I use it though for my blenders. You may notice that the tip of this blender is pretty black. So what I do is just sand it a little bit and get it back to where it was so I don't put additional black marks onto the drawing when I'm trying to draw it. So the sander gets most of that black off there, and then you have a new blending surface to work with. And next up is a drawing glove, and this is a very, very cheap drawing glove that I got at Walmart. It's not a drawing glove, but it works as a drawing glove so that you can draw on the drawing without smearing with your palm the graphite before you've finished the drawing and fixed it. So that's something that I just recently got this, but it works really good. And this is a white pen with a very fine point with white ink, and it comes in extremely handy for, once again, drawing highlights in hair a little bit, whiskers, those kinds of things that are very hard to draw in black and white just using a pencil. So you have to add a little white once in a while, and this comes in very handy for that. So I wanted to show you how the grayscale and value finder works. What you do, you lay this on a portion of the drawing that you're working on, right here, and you can look at that and see that the drawing, or not the drawing, but the photograph is lighter than this value. So you move the value finder over a little bit, you look there, it still needs to be a little lighter, I would think. And here we're pretty close, and here we're pretty close. So the value of this area is somewhere between these two. So at least it gives you an idea of what pencil to try and use to match that area. And comes in pretty handy, so I'll probably be using it quite a bit in this drawing. So let's look at most of the tools I'll be using, and in the next video we'll actually get started with the drawing process. So I hope you'll check and see when that video is up, and I will see you at that time. Okay, so I like to start with the eyes. I'm going to take the protractor, put it right here so I can see, oops, where the start of this eye is, and we'll put it over here and we'll make a little mark where that is. Then I want to see how high the eye comes up, so we'll put the protractor here and make a little mark. And then how far does the eye go over? So I'll put the protractor right there and measure over to there. Right there. And right there. Okay, so we've kind of got a little map of how that eye goes. And let's see what we do next. Now we're talking about drawing this area here under the eyelid, right in here. So let me see if I can draw that on the paper. And I'm going to use a 5H real light pencil, and I'm just going to try and get that to come over like that. Now I got some additional marks in there we don't need, so we'll take those out right now. Kind of get rid of those a little bit. Okay, so we've kind of got the eye started right under the eyelid. Now if you look at the photo, the under part of the eye is kind of hidden by this line, but it also gives us an area we can draw. So I'll draw the under part of the eye like this. And we'll see what we've got. Take a look at the eyeball next. So if we measure where the eyeball starts, it's right about in here. And we'll measure from here to here. We'll make a little mark where that eyeball starts. Right there. So now I'm measuring from the bottom of the eyelid here, from where the eyelid starts, where we made a mark where the eyelid starts, over to the eyeball, and it would go right there. So make a little, oops, didn't make the mark. Make a little mark. And we'll transfer that over to the drawing, make a little mark there. All right. Now that should give us the outer edge of the eyeball, which is like this. Okay. Now let's measure from the edge of the eyeball to the other side of the eyeball. Let's try that. So we're going to go down here on the photograph over to where the eyeball starts, and it would be right in here. Okay, so we'll draw that in. Okay, we should have the basis for the eyeball here. So now we have to draw the pupil in. And I'm going to measure from the edge of the eye that we drew to the start of the pupil, which is right in here. Right there. So now we get to the point where we have to do a little freehand drawing, and we will put in the eyeball, which is right in that area. I got a little glare on the paper, but I think the eyeball is right in this area. We'll shade in a little bit of it here, because it does have a reflection at the top. And you'll notice the outer edge of the eyeball is pretty dark. So I'm going to use one of my darker pencils. I'll use this one for getting that edge of that eyeball a little darker. And the pupil a little darker. Okay. And now we want to draw the rest of the eye in. And this is strictly freehand drawing at this point. We'll take this line out. So let's see if we can get the rest of the eye in and make it look like an eye. I'm just going to start very lightly. And then we'll change and we'll do something a little darker. Okay. And let's start working on the eyelid a little bit here, because we know it's thick and dark right in this area. Put in some shading there. And we'll take our blender and see if we can blend that in a little bit. Okay. Bring this eyeball up a little farther, the pupil. Now before we go too much farther, I want to get the other eye in. I like to do the eyes first. And let's measure from here over to where that eye starts. I think it's like about right there. So if we measure over to here, we put a little mark there. That's about where that eye starts. And as you can see here, I put in the start of the eye a little bit right in here, which is this part on the photo. So we know this goes up like this. We have that in pretty well as a start. Now if we measure over where the kind of the bag under the eye there starts, it'll be right about there. So we would measure here to right about here. And we know that's where the bag under the eye kind of starts. And we can just barely put in a little line there, like that, just to give us an idea. So if we measure the corner of the eye by going from where that bag started up to the corner of the eye, it would be right about there. So that means that this line under the eye will go like this. That should be, and we can change that, but that should be the line of the lower eye right in here. And then we have to work on the upper side of the eye. I think as you can see, this takes time to do this. It's a little tedious, but once you get going, get things kind of laid out, it goes a little faster because it's a little more fun to put in some of these wrinkly lines and those kinds of things. This part, not too exciting. But anyway, this is how I start the drawing, and we'll continue working on it in future videos. Now if you have questions or comments, let me know. I'll be glad to answer them if I can. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and we will eventually get this photograph onto that piece of paper, and it should look pretty close to the photograph if we do it right.